Alright, going to be working on a black and gray portrait today of a dog. To make it easier to understand what I'm talking about, I'm going to borrow the naming conventions that the Silverback inks use, whereas they use the 666 to designate the darkest value and a number 1 to designate the lightest value. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, then 666, and 666. And then the absolute darkest value I'll be using is black. Alright, so to demonstrate my technique, I'm going to start out with just a drawing. So you can see how I'm going to approach the tattoo while I'm working on it. So the first thing I look for are the dark areas, and I'm going to be starting at the bottom and working up. So I will be working in the neck area first. Since there really aren't any major black areas, I'm going to start with the 666 shade. And as you can see here, I'm just looking at the reference photo and going through and finding all the darkest shadow areas and blocking them in. Once I'm done with these darker areas, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the 666 shade and start putting that in, overlapping the darker areas and putting it in where I see it in the reference photo. What this does, this will make for a more gradual gradation, I guess, gradual fade from one dark value into the next value. So as you can see, I'm kind of overlapping the area I did and bringing it out into the new areas. So I've sped this footage up to make it a little easier to watch. Looks like next I'm gonna actually go in and do the black value. So this is pure black. The only area I see it in the neck is right under the ear right there, where it's casting that deep shadow. And I'm gonna jump over to the face as well, just because there's some black over there. Really the only places there's black in this photo, pure black, is gonna be in the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. All right, now I'm going to jump to that 666 value. So it's one step lighter than the shades I've already done. And I'm going back into the neck area, shading those in. And mind you, this is just one approach. This is a technique I'll be using on this particular portrait. Just remember, you're always paying attention to the photo reference. That's your guide, that's your blueprint. It's telling you where all the values are at. Alright, so after that, we're going to go ahead and switch to the 4 value. So you can see we're just getting lighter and lighter. Generally, it's easier to start with your darks than it is with your lights, because if you start with your lights, you tend to misjudge your values more. Even when you're drawing with pencil or any sort of medium, so you generally start with your darks. It just makes it easier to judge your values. Alright, so after this, switch to the 3 value. This will probably be the lightest value in the neck area, except for that spot on the back here, which is in the light, and that one will be a 2 value, followed by a 1 value to finish off the neck. Alright, so hopefully that all made sense. I'm just going to do the exact same process working on the rest of the head. I'm starting with the darker areas first, using that 666 value. And then I'm just going to slowly build from the darkest value to the lightest value. And that's the process I'm going to use on this black and gray tattoo. And you really want to step back every once in a while and look at your overall value tones across the entire piece of artwork. And what I mean by that is we're working on a new section right now, the head, and we want to make sure it doesn't come out darker than the neck, because if we look at this reference photo, the light is coming from up above. So the top of the head is going to get the most light, and as it comes down into the neck is receiving the least amount of light. So the neck just needs to be darker. So you just got to really pay attention to, overall, step back once in a while and judge and make sure your tones aren't off. We'll want to make sure the neck is darker than the head. There's not a whole lot of detail that can be seen in the mouth area because it obviously looks really dark. I actually referenced the color photo to help me see a little more detail in the mouth when I did the actual tattoo itself. Now there's not really any catch lights in the eyes. However, I went ahead and kept those areas a little lighter just to help give a little more life to the eyes in the artwork. So as you can see, there's some open spots in the eyes there. I'll go back over those with a dark gray, but it's just so it's not completely black, because that might look a little creepy. So working back in the mouth area, obviously there's black in there. I'm going to be using the 666, the double 6, and I might even get down to a single 6 in there for some of the lighter areas, but most of that's going to be dark. Alright, so in the beginning I started off a little more consistent as far as sticking with one shade and then getting most of it done before advancing to the next shade. From here on out, I jump around quite a bit, and that's mainly just because I'm kind of rushing through this drawing, and I'm only doing this just for demonstration purposes. I did do a drawing before I did the actual tattoo. Sometimes, and it was very similar to this, but I didn't do it on the computer. I actually drew it in on paper with a pencil. And the reason I did that is it's almost like practice before a tattoo. It familiarizes me with the entire design. I get comfortable with it so that when I do actually do the actual tattoo, it usually goes really smooth. I have done tattoos where I haven't done the drawing first. I've just gone straight from the photo. But I knew I was probably going to be doing a video with this one, so I thought, well, let's go ahead and just show my process. Another thing too is I'm no longer using coil machines. I've been tattooing for 20 years now, and my forearm and my wrists are pretty beat up, and the weight of the coil machines and the top heaviness of them has really taken their toll. So I've since switched to a Cheyenne pen machine just because of the shape, and also it's the weight distribution isn't going to be as hard as on my wrist. So because of that, that's really simplified a lot of the tattooing process as far as keeping machines tuned up, springs, and all the dynamics that go into maintaining a coil machine. So with all that out of the way, I'm basically just going to focus on my technique from here on out. So doing this drawing first and seeing how I do the drawing, hopefully it makes sense, just following the different values and putting them in as you see them. That's pretty much how I approach the tattoo as well, and you'll see that once I'm done with this drawing here, which is getting pretty close to finish. I'm working in the dark area of under the nose right now, using that 666 value, and kind of jumping around in the darker range, but we're just about done with this here. Putting on the final touches. Looks like there's going to be 3 tones up there in the ear shadow. Just finishing up these little shadows around the muscles in the muzzle area. I'll mention real quick too, when I'm doing this tattoo, I'm going to use a magnum needle for the black areas, and then I'm going to use a bug pin magnum needle for all the shading. All right, and the reason for that is shading is the shading ink is very thin. It's very lightweight. It's very watery, so it's going to go in much easier than the thicker, darker black ink. So the black ink, I'm going to use a regular magnum needle, which the needles are a little thicker. I'm going to change the speed of the machine to run a little slower when I'm putting in the black ink, because when you're using those thicker inks like your colors and your blacks, you want to run your machine a little slower so that it has time to punch that ink into the skin. And you also want to be careful not to run your needle out too far while you're punching those in, because the further, if you're riding the tips so you can see where you're working, if they're out too far, what's going to happen is they're not going to actually punch that ink into the skin as well. So just a little tip there for you. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish off this tattoo because I'm not doing any line work whatsoever. So I'm going to be using the lightest shade, that one shade, to go along the edge where the dog's in total bright sunlight. You can see in the photo they're almost completely white. So I'll use that final tone, that lightest tone, to just run along the edge of those lines, and that's how I'm going to finish off this particular design. All right, so that's going to do it for this one. It gives you an idea of the process I'm going to use, and let's go ahead and move onward. So I'm using the Cheyenne Hawk Pen machine. It uses these disposable cartridges. Now, to adjust the throw on the needle, which right here you can see it's all the way out, you simply turn the grip. Turning it will allow you to extend the throw or reduce the throw. The shading, I'm going to be running at 130 on the Cheyenne Hawk power supply, which is equivalent to about 12 volts on an Icon supply. And I'll be punching in the black at 110 on the Cheyenne supply, or 10 volts on the Icon supply. And like I mentioned earlier, when I'm punching in the black, I'm going to want to retract that needle a little bit so I'm not riding the tip quite as far out, so it can punch that ink in a little easier. Alright, so I'm starting with that 666 dark shade, 12 volts, so I'm running the machine kind of fast. Now I've got a light on my eye loops now, so obviously it works great when I'm doing the tattoo, but for video purposes it can be a little hard to see what I'm doing. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. We're not going to watch this whole tattoo. This was 2 hours in the process. But as you can see, I'm starting the same way I started with the drawing. I'm starting with that 666 black. I'm using the photo as reference, and I'm just working in those dark areas. I have this playing at normal speed, so you can get an idea of my hand speed, what I'm using. As you can see, it's not a fast process. Hence, like when I did the drawing itself took about 35 minutes from start to finish, whereas this tattoo took 2 hours from start to finish. So you get an idea of the hand speed. Everything should be making sense. One thing to make sure, the term riding the tips of the needles is used a lot. I do ride the tips of my needles. For those of you who don't really understand what that means, the reason we ride the tips, what it means is you let your needle out a little further. So the needle's actually poking out there really far, and the reason for that is you want to be able to see your needle. You want to see it as it's going in the skin. If you have your tip right against the skin, you can't really see your needle, and so it ends up just being a big mess. So what you do is you extend that needle out a little further, and then that way you can actually see the tips of the needle hitting the skin, and it just helps you see where you're going. But you're not burying the whole machine into the skin. You got to realize the needle only needs to go into the skin about a millimeter to 2 millimeters most of the time, which, look at it on a ruler sometime. Look at how big a millimeter is. Look how big 2 millimeters is, and realize that's as far as you need to go. So if you keep that in mind when you're riding the tips of your needles, you realize you can hang those needles out very far and just use the tips of them. That way you can see what you're doing. It just makes your job a lot easier. Now, like I was mentioning, when you're using color, when you're using that black, those really thick inks, you're going to find out that if you're riding that needle out really far so you can see it, you're going to have a really tough time getting those colors and those thicker inks like the black into the skin. And that's because the needle's coming out so far that it's hard for the ink because it's so thick, it's hard for it to travel that far and bury itself into the skin. So if you're laying color, you're laying black, and you're having trouble, like it just doesn't seem like it's going in very good, go ahead and make sure you check and see how far out you're hanging that needle. You might just want to retract it a little bit so that the needle has enough inertia to push that heavy ink into the skin. All right. Now, when you're using the gray washes, because they're so watery, they're going to go in rather fast. You can hang that needle out a little more. And same if you're lining. Now, granted, I don't do any lining on this tattoo, but when I'm lining, I will hang that needle out much further, because the lining ink is very lightweight. It's a lot lighter than color ink, and it's going to go in easier. And with lining especially, you really want to see the tip of that needle at all times. So I hang it out pretty far, and again, just let it go into that skin about 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters, and that seems to work really good. So yeah, here's just a quick little demonstration. You should be able to really see that tip and see how much easier it is to work. when you can just see where you're going instead of trying to guess. Needle's not going in very far at all. It's just like drawing with a marker. And do be aware, this footage is sped up. You don't want to work this fast. I just didn't want to, make this video too painfully long. So I'm just using circular motions for my hand technique. There's no hard edges, so I'm working pretty loose. The looser you work, the wider your circles, the softer your edges. You're not going to have really hard edges. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just keeping everything light and loose. There's not a lot of detail in the neck, so that's all that's going on here. So when you're putting ink in, whether you're coloring or you're shading, and let's say you've got the needle and skin, you're doing your circles, and you pull the needle out, you stop your machine, you wipe it, and let's say it just doesn't look as full as you thought it was going to. You know what I'm saying? Like you're doing some black, you're coloring it in, you wipe it, and it just looks like the ink didn't go in. And what I think a lot of people do is they think, oh, well, it didn't go in, I need to go over it again more aggressively. And what they do is they press harder and deeper. And the thing is what they're doing when they do that is they're really damaging the skin. The needles only need to go in, like I said, between 1 and 2 millimeters. And going in deeper than that, you're going to end up causing more trauma. There's going to be more bleeding, which in turn is going to open up the risk for more of a possibility of the client getting infected. And that's just bad. It's just bad news all the way around. It's going to look bad on you. It could come back and haunt you later, especially if you don't, fix this technique. If you get known as the person who's just butchering people, or you're known as that heavy-handed person, you really need to realize that that's not the way to address that issue. And normally what's happening there is you're working the area too fast. You're not letting the needles spend enough time in that area. Your hand speed's probably too fast. You're doing your circles too quickly. And so the needles are simply skipping around that area, and you're not getting all the holes full of ink where they need to be. So if you wipe that away and you see that it's an undersaturated area, don't just start digging in and grinding. Don't push those needles in harder. Just go back over it the exact same way you just did, but just slow your hand speed down. So go over it a little slower and go over it about 2 or 3 times. Spend a little bit of time in there. Don't overwork it, but if you slow your hand down, give those needles time. Give them time to just pepper that area with holes. You're going to see that your ink's going to go in. It's going to go in denser. It's going to look more saturated, and you're going to have a lot more success with your tattoos. So it's something I want to point out because, I do see a lot of really messed up tattoos. People come to me and they're like, oh, look at this tattoo I got. And not only did they get charged a whole lot of money, but you could tell the person didn't know what they were doing. They just really butchered that person, and there's no reason for it. So I just wanted to point that out. All right, looks like I'm working on the lightest shade now. Probably that 1, really light. The thing with that light gray is you're actually going to see more of the blood coming to the surface or the redness of the skin than you are the ink. When that heals up, it's going to be a really, really light gray. So I'm being pretty generous with it in these lighter areas just to give a little bit of definition up in the head area. This tattoo is just about done. Like I said before, this was 2 hours from start to finish. No breaks. He's a little sore by now. That shading, because the needles do run pretty fast, it gets really annoying really quick. So I think we were both happy to be done. My back, chest tattoos, you got to kind of lean over them, and it kind of wears on your back a little bit. I actually wear a back brace now under my shirt when I'm doing tattoos. It helps a lot. I'm sure none of you young people are going to do that, but just, thinking about your future. 20 years down the road, don't be shy to throw a back brace on and, keep yourself well enough to keep doing this type of work. So, all right, that's it. Can't wait to see it when it's all healed up. I'll see him again in a few weeks, hopefully, and maybe I'll get a healed picture of it. And yeah, that's that. Thanks for watching.